So the reading increases a lot. There's more, you have less time to analyze a piece of literature, and you have less time to think about like what a prompt is asking you. So you have to work on your reading skills, and then there's also more reading, like there's more books in AP Lang versus in English Honors.
Do you have any strategies for coping with this increased workload? How did you handle it?
I annotate a lot, so like I'll like highlight things that are important, and if it's not as important, then I'll just like toss it to the side, and if I think it's good, then I'll come back to it later.
The writing for AP Lang, like you're expected to know more of like analyzing, like you learn that in 10th grade, and you're expected to kind of know how to rhetorically analyze stuff, and it's also a lot more difficult when it comes to like the grading, because it's on a completely different grading scale. So you really want to get everything checked off that you're trying to do, and then try and get like the best rating possible.
Great.
Going into AP Statistics, I had to study a lot more than I had for any other math class. It's a very different math class, and you have to be able to understand how to do the problems differently.
I would say definitely AP Calc AB is an accelerated course of calculus itself. I think that the units that we've gone through, it's moving a lot faster in that aspect, but it's more about also having to realize that this is an AP course. You're going to be asked more like FRQ questions as to justify your answer. As per se, in calculus, you would just write like one sentence. They're expecting more of a detailed response in that sense, because this is an AP class, and you have to like put in the work outside, whether that's like Delta Math review, or the packets that are inside class. Like this is not just something you can walk into class if you didn't study for it.
The main difference is the pace, and you really have to be doing the work outside of class in order to stay caught up. So you have to expect to be able to do like homework for real when you get home, so you just like paying attention in class to do all of that.
I think the biggest difference going from pre-calc to AP calc is in pre-calc you could just understand, like you know how to do certain problems, like they're used exactly like the test. In AP calc it's not like that. You actually have to understand like what you're learning, and because the test questions are like you could never see a question like that before, so you have to really understand what you're doing.
Heavy on the fast pace and the work outside of class, because in AP Calc AB, you're doing 2 topics per class instead of just 1 topic. So you really need to stay on top of doing the practice outside of the class. It's not the kind of class where you can just cram everything in the day before the test and do well. You actually have to consistently build the skills that you're learning in class.
I definitely think that taking AB sort of prepared me for BC because, well, I had Miss Lolly. She helped me sort of strengthen the foundation of calculus for me to step into BC, because lots of BC you already learned prior, like in the year before. So it's sort of easier in a way, and you're just adding on to what you already know to like expand your knowledge.
AB was definitely more difficult because like math, like I'm like a math girly, so like it was like pre-calc was easier, and then AB was really like it really hit me. But like I took my time and I studied like outside of like I did all the AP classroom stuff, and so BC was really easy for me because like most of the stuff it's like most of the AP material and then plus a little bit of BC. So BC is like pretty easy right now, but AB definitely like study hard.
And then going directly into BC, how was that?
Math analysis definitely prepared me for the basics of Calc BC. Like math analysis does a really good job of like giving you the foundation for calculus, but whereas like AP kids, they'll already have learned like the first 5 units of material. You're kind of going in blind with with most of the material. Like you'll know how to do some of the stuff at a basic level, but when you're asked to really apply it, that takes a lot of like practice, and it's really hard to do well in that class without like actually being active in class and paying attention. Like you'll be like it's not a strict class, but if you're not diligent and like doing work outside of class and preparing with all the practice you're given, then it's going to be really hard to like stay afloat if you haven't taken AP.
AP is very difficult to manage, but I find myself often learning more of one AP science during the class and teaching myself more at home about the other AP science. They both go hand in hand with like workload, but they have different difficulties to them, which I may find one easier than the other, which sort of alleviates all the stress
Great. And what do you think?
I think to take two sciences, one being AP, you definitely need to be passionate about science for sure. And even if one of them, like, people tend to be better at different sciences, even if they're good at science in general. So, for example, if you're better at AP Bio than you would be at AP Chem, if you're taking them both simultaneously, one might be easier, and the other would be more difficult. So, they kind of balance out, so one will always feel easier than the other.
Research chemistry was definitely a lot faster paced with chemistry. With research chemistry, it was more spread across, where you would learn like maybe 3 units a semester or something like that. While as AP chemistry, you have already learned more than half of the units that are needed by the AP exam. And so it's like 8 units crunched into, I want to say, like 5 months or right before the AP exam in May. And it's just really staying on top of all like the notes that you're taking and then like practices that the teachers are giving. It's really important to like stay on top of the homework when you get home. So like what I like to do is when I have assigned work, I go home and complete that work that day. Then it's fresh in my mind and I leave a couple problems later so I can come back to it and see if I can still recount like the same stuff.
Another thing with AP Chem, going into from Research Chem to AP Chem, is it's not just memorizing stuff like Research Chem, you have to actually understand it. The same thing with AP Calc, like you're going to see things that you haven't seen before on the test, and you have to understand what you're looking at.
AP World coming out of Intro to AP, it's a little difficult, especially if this is like your first time taking on like a lot of reading and having to read like a lot of chapters every week and getting quizzed on it. But at the end of the day, if you just put in the work and you just take it little by little and you don't get upset with yourself and discouraged, then it should be fine.
To add on to the AP World conversation, the most difficult thing about AP World for me was changing my mindset from just memorizing facts to learning how to apply it and analyze it, because there's a lot more skills that you need to know in AP World versus in regular history classes we go through.
For AP Human Geo, it's definitely a jump from pre-AP. You have to like make yourself a schedule for your tests and what you need to read and when you need to read it by. And there's definitely a lot of stuff you will miss if you don't take AP World going into 11th grade.
Human Geo was definitely different from Intro to AP because when you're walking into the classroom, my year was online, not online, but we had just come out of COVID, so it was a lot more relaxed. But the tests, they were very, like, every time you walk in class, you would have a quiz to take, and you just had to be aware of, like, the deadlines and everything because it is a lot of memorization, and it's, like, defining terms and, like, writing, so it's just more compensating and stuff like that.
I took AP Econ and AP Psych, and both of those classes are a lot of reading and a lot of outside time because you're kind of going into the class not knowing anything because there's no classes to like prepare you for them. So you go into the classes and you have to do a lot of reading, and especially for AP Psychology, the quizzes and tests are a lot more difficult than you would think going into it. So you have to take a lot of time outside of class to read and really like focus on doing practice quizzes and tests for both electives.
I took AP Econ my junior year, and my junior year was already my hardest year. In taking an AP elective, I thought that I didn't have to spend that much time on it, but you actually really do. You have to take the time to study and understand the material and understand what you're learning and doing your homework as well.
So I took AP French online, but AP French was lots of reading, writing to prepare you for the exam mainly. But having having known another language besides French sort of helped me realize what I'm getting into. Like, it made it easier for me to recognize words that seem familiar to my other language. And you have to be passionate about the language, so you would want to learn more about different words and what they mean, as well as studying the culture, so you sort of don't feel like you're forcing yourself to learn a new language without being interested in the language.
I took AP Computer Science Principles. I would say it's one of the easier of the AP electives, but you do have to be used to the volume of work you have to do. So you have to stay on top of that or else you can get behind pretty easily. But most of all, it's like pretty intuitive, which is good. Going into your junior year after only taking maybe one, I don't even know how many APs you can take in 10th grade, but in 11th grade, jumping from maybe one AP to like 3 APs may seem easy because you see all of your other upperclassmen doing it, but it's really not easy. And sometimes the elective APs can be the hardest APs, and they'll take away all your time from your core classes that you also need to focus on.
How is it juggling AP classes with extracurricular activities? Sports, work, theater, chorus, orchestra, band.
Usually just don't like slack off on your work. I probably just do my work in class because I knew I had a game before practice after school, so I would either do it during class or I would take time to do it during research or something like that.
I'm doing music outside of school, art and sports, as well as like clubs. So managing APs on top of that is really difficult. You have to time manage very well, and sometimes depending on how much workload you have to be willing to sacrifice some things over others because you really can't do it all and do it all well.
This year I'm only doing 2 sports. I recently joined SCA and I'm in a lot of clubs. Last year I did 3 sports, less clubs, but you definitely need to think about what you're doing your sophomore year and adjust it your junior year so that you can fit in all of the classes that you want to take. It's definitely hard to do sports and APs, but I definitely think it's possible. It's just more on the amount of time you're willing to be awake and study and do your homework at home after the sports.
I do sports and I do band, and I also do outside of school, like I do travel sports. So it's, especially with travel sports, it's really a lot of work, and it's hard because a lot of nights you'll go from school to high school practice to travel practice. So you have to be able to, sometimes wake up earlier in the morning to do homework or stay up later, and it's difficult, but you just need to make sure you're getting your stuff done in school and outside of school.
When your sports season starts or like when your job starts, it can be kind of intimidating because you feel like you're spending all your time doing homework anyways, and you can't really fit that in, but it really is just sort of an adjustment. I feel like you have more time than you think you have. Obviously there's a limit, but you just sort of end up making all your free time homework, so that's just something you have to be willing to do.
Yeah, I do sports all 3 seasons and I'm in clubs, and you really have to like manage your time like everybody's saying. You have to be willing to wake up early and go in early to ask your teachers questions or whatever it is you have to do, get work done in study hall. You also need to like plan your weeks like kind of in advance, because you can't just wait until the night before to study for some tests. You actually need to study like every day, like for the week before or however long.
Yes. So outside of school, I do a sport. I have theater company and I work, and then inside school, I'm in the chorus program. Now choir alone, there's a lot of dedication, there's a lot of practice that goes into it, and then adding APs on top of that, it can be a lot to manage, especially when you want to also have like a social life and hang out with your friends. So it's a lot of time management, and it's like what you said earlier, like about like you have to sacrifice some things. So maybe one weekend you can't hang out with your friends because you have to work on stuff or you have a practice to go to, and then you have to do homework after. So it's all about balancing your priorities.